Welcome, Bills Mafia, to Bills or Bust, the podcast dedicated to all things Buffalo Bills. I'm Tom Murphy. Join in as we talk about the Buffalo Bills, of course, and also the other 31 teams in the league that will watch us win the Super Bowl or bust. Hey. Man, we are still alive after that scary one yesterday. Bills do it in their typical fashion, but hey, a win is a win. And today I am very honored to be joined by my buddy, the host of Run That Back podcast, the owner of the London Lightning in one of our fantasy leagues, one of the oldest fantasy leagues in the country that we know of, going about 30 some odd years. Please help me introduce a Tiki Bar fan of 2022, Scott Bunn.
Hey, Tom. Thanks for having me. This is really exciting.
Oh, man, it's such an honor. I'm so glad to have you. First off, you do have to tell me and the audience about the Tiki Bar fan of 2022.
Yeah, so my family and I watch most Bills games, pretty much all of them, with a group of Bills fans. I live outside of Asheville, North Carolina. Our folks, our friends have a house where they have a tiki bar out back on their deck. And it's in an undisclosed location in Western North Carolina because we don't want more people to show up because it's not big enough to handle more. But we get together and we watch Bills games, and they're all Bills fans. And then each season there's a different fan of the year. So this year I was appointed fan of the year. And so there are certain rituals involved with being fan of the year. And so, one of those is at the beginning, there's a whole setup, and there's a shrine, and there are candles, like the St. Josh candles. I think you've seen those.
Oh, nice.
So the fan of the year has to light those and make sure that they're lit throughout the game. And
big responsibility.
Yeah, it is. And then there's a little Bills shot glass, and whatever I'm drinking, I've got to pour it into the shot glass at the beginning of the game as an offering to the football gods. And so then, win or lose, then I do the shot of that drink at the end of the game. So, and then there are other rituals throughout, and our friend's daughter called it a cult, and we're like, it's not a cult. And so then her mom went out and got some chicken bones at the beginning of the year and was throwing them to cast a fortune. So she was like, yeah, but it's not a cult. We're just using chicken bones to see the future,
Hey, these rituals, we're 14-3 now on the season. Those rituals are me, so maybe you have to recruit me down there.
Yeah. They're
with a brain. I don't need to be brainwashed too bad.
Exactly.
And so you're talking about, you're in Asheville, North Carolina. It's funny. I'm, have ties to Buffalo my entire life. I live in Queens. Obviously, New York has a huge Bills fan base. Tell me about Western Carolina. You're able to find some Bills fans. It's just amazing how we're everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, as you know, the Buffalo diaspora is strong and extensive, but especially in North Carolina, I don't know. I grew up in Buffalo. I lived 18 years in Williamsville, New York. My dad taught at SUNY Buffalo. So,
nice.
And my parents are still there. My sister and her family are still there. And then we go back. My family goes back, once or twice a year. We're always there at Thanksgiving. So, yeah, we're still very much connected to Buffalo. But there are a lot of people from Buffalo in Western North Carolina. I went to the Bills-Panthers game 5 years ago. I think that was week 2 with Tyrod. McDermott's first year as coach. Or no, I think Buddy Ryan was still coaching. Anyways, and there were a ton of Bills fans at that game. So I think North Carolina, the pull for Buffalonians is pretty strong there. And then, and then it's just the folks that we watch with, they're Bills fans, and then their neighbors happen to be Bills fans. And then at some point, our son, this was a number of years ago, was at, preschool Montessori, and he was wearing a Bills shirt. And the dad came over and was like, "Are you guys Bills fans? Because we need to talk." And then we've run into people just throughout, like, we live outside of town in a little town in the mountains outside of Asheville. And, there are people with Bills stuff and they'll honk at us and they'll, wave to us and yell, "Go Bills." So it's pretty fun and pretty strong here.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. It is just great. My mom had a neighbor in Alexandria, Virginia when she lived there who was Bills fans. We're just everywhere. We're taking over, we're becoming America's team.
Yep.
And
Totally.
also, real quick, tell me about the show Run That Back.
Yeah, so Run That Back. It's both a radio show that we do live on the air for Asheville FM, which is the free
Nice.
Community radio station. Mostly does music, but there's plenty of talk. And so we've been doing, sports talk radio. We call it non-shouting sports radio.
I like that.
Yeah, our big catchphrases were indie sports radio. So
I noticed that. I noticed that on the link.
Indie sports radio. So we've been doing it since 2013 as a radio show, and then a few years ago we turned it into a podcast where we take that live show and I edit it down, and so it's available wherever you get podcasts, or you can listen to it live Wednesday nights 7 p.m. on AshevilleFM.org, or there's a couple of episodes that are archived on our page on the Asheville FM website, or again, you can search whatever your podcast platform is. It's there every Thursday morning. So it's myself and my friend Tom Chalmers, who's my co-host. And we talk about all kinds of sports, talk about the Bills plenty, but we have, guests at different times. Have you been on the show, Tom? I can't remember.
No. Hey, but I am available.
We got to get you on. Yeah, our buddy Jason Thurston, who I know has been on your show. Mike Vago's been on. Paul Sinta's been on. All of those folks, and then other people, non-Bills fans that we know, Matt Clark and
of course
Mike Futia.
Great guys.
But then we have lots of different people talking about community issues in the Asheville area related to sports. But we like to talk to people who have, some kind of sports story, whether as a fan, as a coach, as a player, whatever it is. So, we're covering all kinds of topics.
Oh, yeah. I'll have a story to share whenever. Give me the word,
Let's do it. All right.
Pretty flexible. Yeah. Got to get into, these good old Billy goats, as a friend of mine calls them. It's trying to make that catch on. I like it. I don't think anybody else does. But do our Buffalo Bills minute recap here. Despite winning the yardage battle by nearly 200 yards and 100-yard receiving performances by Stephon Diggs and Gabe Davis, costly turnovers and call reversals of misfortune on possible catches keep a banged-up Miami Dolphins squad hanging around in the wild card round game Sunday at Highmark Stadium. And in true 2022 Buffalo Bills fashion, the Bills keep the Mafia on pins and needles till the last minute, securing the 34-31 win and moving on to the divisional round to face Cincinnati next week in what will prove to be an emotional game.
I like it.
Okay, good. Okay. And so, Scott, as you know, we do trivia every week. So I'm going to give you, you've been on some of these trivia threads. I think this is going to be an easy one for you. I think this is the easiest one. So yesterday was our 5th time playing Miami in the Super Bowl era in the playoffs, tying one other team. And who is that team?
Okay, so we've played the Dolphins 5 times.
Yep, yesterday was the 5th time.
Bills' lifetime, and we faced
in the Super Bowl era.
Okay.
And I think it would also go over into the pre-era too. Nobody else is at 5.
Is it the Chiefs?
Bingo. They are now number 5.
Nice.
It's because we kind of forget we played them in the first AFL championship that led to Super Bowl 1 that we lost.
The first of many big losses.
Yes. Beat them twice in the Super Bowl years of the early 90s.
Mm-hmm.
And of course,
with Joe Montana. Yeah.
I think both of those years. Yeah.
Yep.
Or actually, I think it may have been the second year was Steve DeBerg, if that name rings a bell.
Yeah, I think it was DeBerg, and then Montana, I think, was one of those years.
That was the AFC Championship. Maybe Montana was on that roster in like 91. It was the 91 and 93 season. I remember. That's the good old days. But hey, we're back in the new good new days.
I agree.
And,
I think this is the new golden age.
Oh yeah. I've always said, looking at replays of past games, I think this Bills teams would just wipe that team out of the water. I mean, I think the NFL now is just a group of Bruce Smiths.
Yes.
Bruce Smith was just kind of like a enigma back then. I mean, and he would still be great now. But, you go back then and it was like the physiques of like these defensive ends and past defensive ends were much different before, Bruce came along.
This might be controversial. I wish we could switch defenses. I think that defense was really talented. Leonard Smith, Nate Odoms,
my favorite, Daryl Talley, always my favorite.
Yeah, and especially also the Bryce Pop years when we had that great pass rusher with Bruce and Phil Hansen. That defense was really good. And I don't know if our current defense is quite at that level, but especially if we could get that like Wade Phillips group in that was really attacking and
that was a great defense.
Quarterback, that would be great.
Oh yeah, it's a different defense. I kind of love this defense. They're kind of like a summation of their parts. But aside from Vaughn, there are great players, but there's no superstar. Where those teams kind of seem to have like players, just in a complete elite category. Also, before we get to the game, just quick news. Obviously, no more important news this year for the Bills than the health of Damar Hamlin, and absolutely fantastic. Past week, he's back home. Visited the facility earlier in the week. That just had to be a huge boost for the guys, and it is. You probably agree with me. 2 weeks ago, it was just absolutely devastating. I almost, for about 24 hours, I didn't know if I wanted to watch football for a while.
Yeah.
But I do have to say, as the news has gotten better, and when I watched last week, I was like, how am I going to feel? And I got into it, but I was a little more like, oh, it's okay if they don't win. And, it's the game. Yesterday, it is just a game, of course, but yesterday, I was definitely all in, where I'm just like screaming at the TV, saying things I can't take back to the players when they mess up, that true fandom. And it is just so much of it is attributed to, probably agree, just how greatly he's been progressing.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And I thought he was going to be there live for the game, but I guess, visiting the facility the day before, and I saw that there was videotape that they ran on the scoreboard before the game.
Oh, yeah.
So maybe we'll see him live before the Cincinnati game. I mean, that's also
the place would just erupt.
Yeah, and that would also just be weird, but it would be great if he could go and especially connect with T. Higgins and Zach Taylor and those.
Oh,
folks.
for sure.
Yeah, that would be.
I mean, yeah. Considering his first thing when he woke up was, "Did we win?" I think he's it's just like definitely a process guy, as McDermott would call him, and obviously still wishing the best for him. And it's just such a relief to hear this news.
Yeah.
And also this week, the the Associated Press announced the All-Pro team, which I usually like to follow a little more. The Pro Bowl is it's a bunch of BS. I never find it. Like, even with there's Bills who make it, and I'm like, really? I did that last year with Dawkins. Don't get me so. Love the guy personally. You could get a little frustrated. Does a better job than I would, but still, as the fan, I call him out a bunch. But definitely, we only had two. First teamer Matt Milano. It's just great to see him get his due. As finally one of the best linebackers. Been a little inconsistent late in the season, but obviously yesterday, monster game. Yeah. And it's just great to see him get that national recognition. Being a 5th round pick from 2017, we were all just like, who's this guy? He has some special team. Let's see.
Yeah, exactly. And, you'll hear Romo and others, before the All-Pro dezignations say, he's one of the most underrated linebackers in the league. And you're like, he's properly rated by Bills fans. We know how special this guy is, especially when he's been out, and you realize how much of the defense hinges on his play.
Oh, yeah. Him and Edmonds. I was so glad,
Yep.
in the
I
same
agree.
breath, Edmonds, he got a lot of grief that I thought was undeserved. I know there's kind of that camp like pro. I was like, I leaned pro Edmonds,
Mhm.
and this year, I mean, anytime he was out, it was just those two are just such a force. Especially running with like a two linebacker set. It's just good. I'd love to see both of those guys get their due. Oof. And we're gonna, as Jason Thurston said, with the Roquan Smith deal, we're gonna need to back the Brinks truck up to
So,
to Edmonds, I think, and I'll be fine. It's not my money,
yeah,
and
right.
and obviously Diggs deservedly voted to the second team, and it's they only awarded two quarterbacks. Josh, probably the interceptions kept him off. He's always number one all pro in our minds.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Diggs is well deserved. I don't think they have a slot for like nickel cornerback, but I think Taron Johnson could have gotten that if there was like that specific designation. I don't know if they do fullback anymore either.
I think they, what? I think they sometimes throw like like they threw like slot receiver in there for Cole Beasley. And I know Taron Johnson is often considered one of the best, slot corners. And usually that's, usually I think that's a team's like third best, often third best like cornerback. But no, he's definitely kind of like taken that position over since he's like in his fifth year. He's really held on to that well.
What a great season he's had. And through yesterday, I mean, he was just remarkable.
Oh, he was all over the place. And I notice, when he usually gets interceptions, I always talk about this. They seem to be the most clutch interceptions of all time. Against Kansas City, the 2 pick sixes in 2020. Yeah, I'm losing my years already. So, it doesn't matter like how many all pros you have. This team is just a cohesive unit, but always fun to see our guys get some credit there. And man, we got to talk about this game a little bit. It was crazy. Runtime of this game was like 4 hours long. And a lot of it was because there were so many reviews. That was like one thing that just stuck out. Like even aside from like win-loss and how we played, it seemed like everything was getting reviewed, and it was often like it seemed like once it went in our favor, and often it was not.
Yes, and also we didn't get a review on the Stephon Diggs touchdown play that was really close. But again, if that had been like called a touchdown in the end zone, I don't think they would have overturned it by review. But
exactly,
who knows with that crew? They were very inspecting every square inch of the field. Did it brush? Did any of the fake grass blades brush?
Breaking out the monocle in the little booth.
Yeah,
and it was.
But yeah, it just took forever. I think at one point we were like, "It's already 4:00, and I think it's still the third quarter." This is insane.
I know. I had dinner plans at 5, thinking just in Midtown. And I was thinking it's like I'll just leave right when the game is over. It's like, but I still might have like too much time. What am I going to do in between that time? And I was half an hour late.
Yes,
because I'm sorry, I was not missing that game. I don't. I don't care if people are a little annoyed with me. It's just sorry. There's no way I'm just going to be like, oh yeah, up 3 points. Okay, let me just go. And I do have to ask. Yesterday, we won by 3. We had no problems moving the ball for the most part. We had, like I said, 200 more yards than the Dolphins. It wasn't like Skylar Thompson had great coming out party. So we know the offense is good. The defense is one of the best. Both of these units are one of the best. Do you think we can cut the mistakes out? It seems like week after week, the biggest opponent the Bills face are the Bills.
Yeah. So here's my quippy answer is that it felt like, there was that stretch where the national media kept harping on the Bills' record in one-score games, and they were like, they were 0-8, and it was just getting really annoying. And we're like, yeah, but we make games, one-score games that normally wouldn't be one-score games because of our talent. But anyways, now it feels as though the Bills only want to win one-score games. They're like, that's the only way we know how to win now. And so, but everything was just sloppy, as you said. And, that went towards most areas of the field. Special teams, we saw Hines, muff a kick. Fortunately, we recovered it. We saw,
Yeah,
bad punt coverage against Cedric Wilson.
mhm.
The coaching, McDermott kept calling defensive timeouts. And then we would just see that we had just stopped them, and he had called timeout, and you're like, quit calling defensive timeouts, like they're not helping. Like, we want them to be flustered. The Bills are going to be fine, but they seem flustered. Why are you calling timeout, giving them more time? So
Yeah,
that was
it's
just weird. And then, I mean, always it comes down to Josh Allen. It comes down to the quarterback, and they always get more praise than they deserve for victories, and get most of the criticisms when they lose. I think no matter what, Josh is getting both of them, no
oh
matter
yeah,
what the result is.
oh
Uh,
yeah,
and we sort of he's a chaos agent, right?
oh yeah,
And so we don't win without Josh Allen, and we usually lose because of him. So it's
oh yeah,
usually deserved. So we live by his sword and die by his sword. And
oh
you know,
absolutely.
the first quarter, he was sensational. He was out of
Oh,
this world. He was,
it was
yeah,
playoff Josh. Yeah.
playoff Josh. He was playing as well as any quarterback plays in the NFL. And then he had a sloppy quarter and a half,
Hmm.
because the second half of the third quarter and the first half of the fourth quarter, he was outstanding again. And then he was just off again
Hmm.
at the end of the second quarter, and then the end of the game yeah. So it was just like it was a weird thing. So there's a couple of things with him. I don't think he's moving very well. He had that weird little encounter with the beginning of the postponed Cincinnati game, where he kind of came up limping right before DeMar's
Oh
injury.
yeah.
And
Hmm.
he didn't move all that well against the Patriots. He, like, kind of moving all right in the pocket, but none of the
Yeah.
huge gash run
Yeah.
plays. And we certainly didn't see that against Miami either. I think he had
Oh yeah.
one.
They seem to really close in on him.
Yeah. So I think some of it is game plan, but I think also he's missing a little bit of his burst, and so I think he's good enough to play, obviously,
Hmm.
but I, I think that element has been missing the last couple of weeks. And then also, I mean, everybody's talking about it, but it's because it's true. He just goes for the kill so much, and
Hmm.
it just turned into blinders that was the only way he wanted to attack the blitzing Dolphins
Hmm.
defense. And he was like, I'm just going to throw it deep because we can get a big ball and maybe score or set up a score. And so he was
Hmm.
just going for the kill every time. And you're like, look, Diggs is open short. Somebody's open
Yeah.
short. It's like you can see them. And like, those are
Oh
good
yeah.
7-yard gains,
Oh,
and like,
you do see it a lot.
yeah. And so, obviously when he connects on those, like the big one to Diggs early in the game, the
Oh
stuff
yeah.
with John Brown and Diggs against the Patriots, it's sensational. And
Oh
then
yeah.
other times you're just like, dude, like, take
Yeah.
it. Like, just
Oh
take
yeah.
it. So, yeah, it's Josh Allen at his chaos agent best. I think we saw it yesterday.
Oh yeah. That's such a great way to call him, because it is. It's just like, oh, oh effing hell, Josh. But it's just like, but then he comes on the field and it's like, all right, Josh, do your thing. You
Yeah.
just have
Yeah.
short term memory, like he's just capable of anything, and it could be
Yeah.
most of the time it's good, but sometimes it can just be very bad.
My other thing is I'm not as hard on the Bills defense as others and other people that mutual acquaintances. Um, but I think they played a better second half of the year, especially when guys started getting healthy again. Um,
Oh yeah.
but like Leslie Frazier and Sean McDermott run a very conservative,
Oh yeah.
game plan. a conservative defensive game plan. And especially, you need to do that with Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill. I mean, Hill especially is just terrifying. You just, and we know it only too well as Bills fans. Having said that, there were times when I thought we were just a little soft. The blitz was working really well for us, and then he went away from it for large stretches of it. And I was just like, what are we doing? And, I also think we really miss Von Miller. I mean, that's a
for sure.
duh observation, because he was a superstar earlier this year. He was playing so well. And we're back to where we were last year, where it's really difficult for us to generate pressure on the quarterback without sending extra players. So
that is true.
So then that means we have to be careful with that. And that's why Frazier was probably like, I don't want to go to this well every time. But at the same time, then Skylar Thompson was just sitting back there and had tons of time. He wasn't great, I think he was 40%. Yeah, and I think the defense played pretty well, and they had some gaps. They dropped some balls, lost balls in the sun, but it's just the defense isn't quite at that 2020 level. I wish we could have, again, if we could swap defense like I talked before, I wish we had that 2020 defense and this offense, because we're just not quite there. And we saw some great individual efforts. I mentioned Taron Johnson. Elam was fantastic, I thought. I wish he was starting. I thought he played great against both Hill and
You can tell he's only going to get better, too.
Yeah, I think so. I think he needs more playing time. But we also saw so much missed tackling, which is always the worst of, the Bills. And Milano had some, Edmonds, these guys who are usually pretty reliable. And, So
there was
it shouldn't have been that close for many reasons. And
exactly.
Those were a few of them. The Allen, the special teams weirdness, the McDermott weirdness, and then softness on the defense.
Oh, yeah. And it's also, one thing I noticed with the sacks, I know it happened twice, get the sack. It's like, oh, right, 3rd and 19. And then they, I think, converted a 3rd and 19 to the 1. And it's just you forget about that sack immediately. And the sack is just worthless. And there was another 2nd and 19. That was just you can't give that to a rookie quarterback.
Yeah, our defense just continually does this. Gives up first downs on 3rd and longs, and you're like, that's a situation that we want and we need. What are we doing? And it's because we don't have a pass rush on 3rd down, and we get it on
feel more comfortable on 3rd.
Yeah, we get it.
I feel more comfortable on 3rd and short.
Exactly, and we get the good pressure or the quarterback sacked on 1st or 2nd down, and then 3rd down we go back to soft zones, and then it's oh, this guy has 4 yards of cushion and space, and just makes it easy completion. We saw that especially in the Vikings game, earlier this year. Saw it in the Patriots game too. This one,
for sure,
and then this week too. The Zach Wilson Jets game was. It was just, we were just so soft and giving up these 3rd and longs, it's just what is it? What can the Bills do differently in terms of game planning in the playoffs that can allow us just to get off the dang field?
Yeah, I know, exactly. And that kind of brings us to, one of the next parts. We're not going to be able to play that kind of defense against Cincinnati with that receiving core. You could just imagine giving Jamar Chase those open lanes. We saw a little bit of it in the in the first game. Yeah, this is kind of where it comes in to where against Cincinnati, the mistakes, because the Bengals are just going to score. They're going to score against a great defense. I'll call this a great defense. The numbers kind of show it sometimes. Sometimes the visuals don't, but we're going to have to really make sure we're not making those mistakes we do on offense. And the little things, I wanted to mention another thing from the game. It's one of those things I just hate. People hate, those personal fouls. I do too. Anything that's roughing the kicker. I hate when we kick it out of bounds on a kickoff. So unnecessary.
Yeah, you're right.
It's we're up 17-0. It's give it to them at the 25. It's a rookie quarterback. What are you trying to do all this little trickery? And it didn't go out at like the 1. It went out at like the 10.
I know.
And granted, they only got a field goal out of it, but it's still, we can't be giving up Joe Burrow or Patrick Mahomes, or even Trevor Lawrence. We can't be giving them the ball on the 40-yard line just that easily without them giving any effort.
Yeah. And again, just like a lot of stuff, a lot of plays that all phases of the team just want to have back. And and that's one of them. I do want to, besides, I talked about Allen. Diggs was sensational. Knox's touchdown catch was incredible. I thought Shakir had a really good game. That I would like Shakir, and I don't think he's gotten as much PT as I would have liked. McDermott's very conservative again with rookies. We're seeing it with Elam. We're seeing it with James Cook, who's gotten a lot more playing time and touches as the year has gone on, and we've seen his effectiveness get better. I think we're seeing the same thing with Shakir too.
Oh, for sure. And speaking of Cook, I'm just loving this guy more and more every week. I think as far as like NFL stat leaders for the year, he missed the minimum of attempts, I think by like 6 or something. I think he would have led. He had during the regular season 5.8 yards a carry.
Wow.
That's it's definitely something to and my gosh, knock on wood, I remember his first carry against the Rams was fumble, and we didn't see him for like another 5 quarters.
Yes.
And he's just been flawless like since. I mean, as far as just as much as you could expect from a rookie.
Well, and I also, again, I'm not sure what was happening. We saw, like I said, the Dolphins dropped a number of balls that were perfectly thrown. We also saw both Shakir and Knox, both guys I was praising. We saw them bobble the ball enough as they catch it, but it sort of hits the ground a little bit. And the NFL is going to call that pretty much every time. So you just have to keep the ball away from the ground, even if it's bobbling, in your arms. Just like securing that. But, I think it was Bart Scott who at the halftime show was saying, sometimes with a cold ball, you're just not sure what to do with it, catch it with your hands or sort of cradle it against your body a little bit more. And so he thought that's what was happening on both sides of the ball. But and there was sloppiness for the Dolphins too. So it was just
we caught some as many mistakes as we made. We caught a lot of breaks too. So it almost seems like it just balanced, like it erases all of those breaks we got.
Exactly. It was just a weird game, just as a whole. Just weird game. It lasted forever. The Dolphins, getting the snap off late, of course not getting flagged because they kept saying, oh yeah, he called timeout or we called timeout. And we're like, what?
Oh, I know.
I was like, how come we're not seeing a replay of McDaniel calling timeout before the whistle? Because I was like, I don't think that happened,
Oh, yeah. And it almost felt like, did each team get like 5 timeouts a quarter?
I know.
It was just like, I know, because it was just, because they were all happening on those kinds of plays.
But I think because, it just is so, sometimes it just comes down to takeaways, giveaways, and it's reductive, but, sometimes it's just that. They don't win, the Dolphins don't get anywhere that close if those turnovers don't happen, one of which was, really bad play by Allen, the fumble. But then, the Beasley one, that's not on him. Also, he got interfered. Since we're on a Homer podcast, Beasley got interfered before the ball got there. And then also the play to John Brown. It wasn't a great throw by Allen, or maybe it was, and Brown just misread it. Either way, they were just not connected on that.
No, I was going to say, I think at first it just seemed like, oh, come on, Josh. But I think Romo was saying he could tell by the way Brown ran the route that it just seemed like where the ball was going. It seemed like he was supposed to go to like the outside. Or something. It was like,
but Allen threw it inside. Yeah,
he did.
Yeah, and also, okay, so lot of things that you learn about the NFL rule book. I've been watching football since I was like 6. So illegal contact is like a defensive back is allowed to sort of jar and, ride
Mhm.
the receiver within 5 yards. If it happens after the 5 yard mark, it's called illegal contact. But
Mhm.
if the quarterback is out of the pocket,
Yeah.
there's no so illegal contact doesn't matter. But I was like, but then doesn't that just become pass interference? Like
Yeah. It's,
there's still there's still like you're not allowed to hit a guy after 5 yards,
oh,
and like it's affecting his
yeah.
route. And so if
I
a
know. It's
quarterback's
like,
outside of the pocket, you're allowed to shove a guy? Like,
I know, yeah. Like, so if like in 2 weeks, when we are in the AFC Championship, like when Patrick Mahomes is outside the pocket, I think we can just push Travis Kelsey to the
we
ground.
could just mug him?
Yeah,
Yeah, like,
exactly. It'll take three. It'll take three of our guys to do it.
yeah. So I was like, isn't that pass interference? Like, did you heard that call yesterday,
Oh yeah,
right?
and I was telling myself like, okay, maybe I've heard that, but I just definitely don't know. It's like a lot of the penalties and such. I'm like, oh, like what makes that different from such and such or
I've never heard it. And maybe that's a guiding philosophy that just is known and just has never been uttered before. But I've never
Mhm.
actually heard an official say that out loud on the microphone. And I'm like,
Yeah,
yeah, but then it's pass interference.
yeah,
It was so weird. So yeah, mark it down. And I like Googled it afterwards, and I was like, it looks like that's actually
yes,
true.
exactly.
But
It
I'm
was like,
like, it gets called as pass interference in other times. So I was
yeah,
just befuddled by that.
yeah, because you'd almost think that like more cornerbacks would be completely aware of that rule and be like, he's outside the pocket, like boom, 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 boom,
Yeah, yeah, I know.
And yeah, I guess I didn't get that. And a lot of times when I watch, like, I'm just so used to the Bills getting penalties, which is kind of funny. They didn't yesterday. They were really good yesterday with the penalties, which
Yeah.
was kind of phenomenal. And also kind
With
of,
we had the other gaffes and
oh,
things.
exactly. I
Yeah,
know. It's just like, okay, yeah, we're gonna be disciplined on that aspect, but then,
yeah.
oh yeah, we're just gonna do fumble it 3 times, get it back 3 times, which was fortunate. But yeah, we were really good on the penalties. I think it was just I think there was a pass interference and the kickoff. I think those were the only two,
Yeah.
at least up until late in the game. It would be good to keep that momentum going
Yes.
and minimize these mistakes again, since like we just can't afford to. I know we can run the table, but there's no way. Like games are going to get tougher from here on out. We're going to probably, at least in the AFC, we probably won't face that much of a tougher defense than we saw yesterday. But the offenses are just any offense we face from here on out is going to be considerably better.
I think that Cincinnati defense is really good, actually. Though they've had some injuries, I think they're quite good. And, they shut down Mahomes and the Chiefs last year, and pretty much
Oh
everybody's
yeah,
come back.
they have some
And
great players.
yeah, they do. So I think scoring is going to be a little bit harder,
Mhm.
but I mean, we have the ability to outscore any team in the league. So,
Oh yeah,
um, and so that's probably why Josh Allen is like, I'm going for the kill every time.
oh for sure. I mean, because I was noticing with I watched that game, yeah, the majority of that game yesterday, the late night game, the Cincinnati and Baltimore. It definitely watching it, you could definitely tell who the better team was, and
Yeah.
obviously, kind of the Ravens were in the same boat as the Dolphins, playing
Mm. Yeah.
perhaps a little more seasoned quarterback than Skylar Thompson, but still depths below Lamar
Yeah.
Jackson in as far as talent. But somehow, it's like it seemed like the defense mainly had their number, but
Yeah.
then again, kind of like the Ravens were just kind of chipping off these like kind of big plays, and somehow we're staying in it. I think. I mean, they have some great players. Those two ends, Hendrickson and Hubbard.
Yeah.
I've liked them since they've come on the scene. It's
Yeah, they're
just
great.
I'd love to have either one of them on our team.
Oh yeah.
And both of those defensive tackles, they're going to be tough, especially against our offensive line, which I'm starting to consider a liability.
Yeah. I
I'm
agree.
starting to lose my patience with them.
What's happening with Rousseau? Is he hurt?
I didn't. I actually not heard that. That would be
I didn't see him very much yesterday. If he was playing, he was
I
really
noticed he had
quiet.
a couple of. Oh, okay. No, I did. I saw his number quite a bit. He didn't put up some stats. I think he had some decent rushes. I was seeing a lot from Basham. Basham was getting in there. One person I did not notice at all, but apparently he played because Mr. Thurston was saying, he's like, oh, he had some nice rushes, was A.J. Epinesa. I almost thought he was hurt. I did not. I noticed Rousseau quite a bit. He just didn't get any, he didn't get anything really on the stat line.
Yeah, I'm the opposite. I saw plenty of Epinesa, but I didn't see Rousseau at all. Yeah, but I think Basham was the best of them all in terms of rushing the passer, and it wasn't great. And those guys really need to step it up. Like that's the area of improvement, especially against a weakened Bengals line. If we're gonna win, it's going to be because those guys take it up a next level. And, I saw Rousseau earlier this year, especially with Vaughn on the other side, was playing magnificently. And then he even played pretty well immediately after Vaughn went out. But has seemed to tail off a little bit, I think, at the end of the year, like he did last year, Rousseau. And I wonder, last year I was like, oh, he's hitting a rookie wall or something like that. But we've got to just think something through, and maybe it's game plan related to free up Rousseau a little bit, or unleash hell with Basham, because we don't have to worry about Joe Burrow burning us in terms of running. He's an effective runner, but he's not Lamar Jackson or or some of the others. And so we don't have to worry about contain so much. You just need to get in there and force him into a bad pass or get there because, the ball comes out really quickly,
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Oh, it's, obviously in those 8 minutes that we saw that Monday night.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if he threw an incomplete pass. Yeah. And he was just like, bam, bam. And so we're going to have to expect a lot of that. And Bills are definitely going to have to get in their 2021 playoff mode. If they want to compete. That performance yesterday is just not going to cut it. Hopefully, they can get it out of their system. We absolutely know what they're capable of.
Yeah,
and it's going to be a good one next week, 3 p.m. on Sunday. And I am getting the 2-minute warning from the producers here. Okay. So I'm going to give the next week's trivia question. And Scott, if you know it, please go on to the Twitter page at Bills or Bust Pod and give your answer. It's a much harder one than last week's. So in the game yesterday, Zach Sealer had the defensive touchdown for Miami, which was the first one in a while. What team and what year was the last defensive touchdown scored against us in the playoffs? And a huge extra credit, meaning double praise, of course, to anybody who can name the somewhat big name who did score that.
I don't think I know. I know I'm not supposed to say out loud, but
okay. Once we wrap here, I can definitely let you know, give you a couple cracks at it. But hey, Scott, this was a pleasure, man. This went by really, really quickly. I knew it would.
Unlike yesterday's game.
Oh, exactly. Yeah, exactly. I know. They could use a little lesson of flow from us because that was fantastic. A lot of fun. I'd love to have you back, and we'll be in touch this week. Enjoy the game. And to Bills Mafia, thank you once again for joining us. We definitely appreciate it. Please follow our Twitter page at Bills or Bust Pod. And let's go, Buffalo! Thanks again for listening to Buffalo Bills or Bust. Remember to like and subscribe. Leave a comment, and let's go, Buffalo! Buffalo Bills or Bust has been a Samurai Dinosaur production. Copyright 2023.